All right, we're going to be talking about Titane by Julia Ducournau. This is a 2021 film, came out recently. Um, I didn't know anything about this going into it. I
Me
didn't know the
neither.
genre. I didn't know anything about what the director had done in the past.
Mhm.
I didn't know the star of the film. I think it's her first. Um, so it was a bit of a shocker to sit down and work my way through this.
That's more blind than I was. I didn't know much about it except that it had won Cannes.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think I had seen like a minute of the trailer. I think I watched enough of the trailer that I was like, no, 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 I got to stop watching this because I'd rather go in more blind. But I forgot most of that. And I was wrong about the genre. I thought it was like a sci-fi movie for some reason. I guess I saw the thing,
Mhm.
like the poster, and I assumed, oh, this is like a sci-fi. And I guess it's not a sci-fi in a kind of a
It's not
way.
not.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a way to start this conversation is actually to talk a little bit about genres and the way that the genres tend to get coded in movies and how this film does not do that.
Mhm.
Um, if you just looked at the film aesthetically, you could think this is just an indie art film and
Sure
kind
thing.
of
Yeah.
like that's it. And that's kind of what I sort of thought I was getting into.
Uh,
And as the film progresses, you start to realize that this is actually a horror movie, in
yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
with kind of like, on the one hand, very what I would call gritty realism, but the inclusion of quite fantastical elements to it as well that aren't even grounded in anything sciency.
Right.
So if we were to compare this film to, say, The Fly, probably the most famous body horror film
Right.
there is,
Yeah.
um, The Fly is coded as a horror movie in so many ways. You know through the vibe, through the aesthetic, that it's going to be a scary movie, that bad things are going to happen,
Mhm.
and that it's going to show you revolting things. And so it tells you that going into it. And then when the transformation happens, it's kind of like uh, it's because of this science experiment that went awry. But
Mhm.
in Teton, the strange things that occur aren't actually grounded in that. It's a very interesting film that's like it's a I don't even know how to describe it. It's a
Yeah.
melange of many different genres all in one.
Yeah. I guess I could have guessed ahead of time that it was going to be more of a horror thing. And I think maybe a third of the way through it, I was reminded because I actually have seen one of her previous films. It's called Raw.
Okay.
Um, and it's I don't remember a whole lot about it, to be honest. I was not um I didn't enjoy it. I guess I didn't enjoy it that much. I don't remember, but what I do recall from it is that it was, every now and again a movie comes along where the marketing of the movie is surrounded around the fact that like people left the theater
Mhm.
or so and so passed out or
Mhm.
had a heart attack watching this movie, and it's like, oh, I got to see what's this movie that people were throwing up in the theater because of. And that movie Raw has a few of those moments that are just like, this is so uncomfortable to watch. And it's, if you had like, a big plate of nachos before you saw it, you probably would have a bad time.
Yeah.
And Titan has similar moments, I think, that are shocking and difficult. They're cringeworthy. It's like,
Not in
you,
the humorous way, but in the
no,
sense
no,
of
they
you're
made me
cringing
cringe.
because of
Just, I don't want to see it.
you take some of the physical discomfort and pain that the
Exactly.
on-screen characters are experiencing onto yourself as you're
And you
watching
want them
the
to
movie.
stop, but they
Yeah,
don't
you want them
stop.
to stop,
And
and they can't.
yeah, so about a third of the way through, I recognized that, oh, this is this filmmaker. Duh, yeah, they're gonna make this kind of movie that's, they're provocateurs, I suppose you could say.
Mhm.
Like that's the whole point. And it's interesting because it seems like there are at least a handful of French filmmakers that love the concept of being provocative and even having people not being able to sit through their movies or whatever it is, like eliciting such a response that they won't even finish it. But this, I'm glad you brought up The Fly, because I think one of the best things you can relay this movie with is the fact that it felt very Cronenberg. It's almost like a new Cronenberg style thing,
Mhm.
which I'm happy to see. And it's similar to other auteur filmmakers that are singular, like Cronenberg or Lynch or whomever. You get people trying to jock their style or their thing and just being unsuccessful at it. Whereas this time it was like, I thought it was pretty successful at doing the body horror thing in an effective way where, not grounded, I guess, but it definitely elicits that response from you of like putting yourself in the shoes of that person and going through it.
Man, there are so many things to unpack here, as they say in modern day parlance. One thing that I picked up on what you said was that, these body horror directors, are trying to make you feel uncomfortable. But I would contrast this with the Cronenbergian body horror, where you're presented with things that are revolting. Certainly wouldn't want them to happen to you. Their bodies are undergoing transformations, mutations. Disgust is the emotion that we're feeling as we're watching an average Cronenberg flick, is kind of what I would say. But I feel that in this film, so much of the horror is related to physical pain.
Yes, yeah.
The skin ripping apart, the nose being broken on the edge of the washbowl, the car accident initially. We could keep going through the list, but it's so interesting that the horror isn't so much transformation related. It's like, ouch, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah. It's true. And I don't know. I guess I might have to apologize in advance, because a movie like this is going to have my brain going in super different directions constantly. I just need to get out that when this movie was over, I did not know what to think. Like, I have not been bamboozled by a movie in a really long time. Like, there are movies where I need a few minutes or a few hours, maybe even a day or two, to like process it and decide what I think about it. But I usually can arrive to it pretty quickly. Like, did I like this? This one, not at all. It was over and I was like, I have no idea. It's like, did I like this movie? Did I hate this movie? Was it good? Was it stupid? Like, why is it, there was just a range of emotions. But what I can say is that it's made me think about it consistently, for the last few days. I saw it on, what is today, Monday? I think I saw it on Saturday night. And I've been thinking about it pretty consistently, but it's hard to draw a conclusion from it. And maybe that makes it a really ideal candidate for this show, because everything that I have to say about it, I think, could be argued in either direction. Like, that's a good thing. It's a bad thing. I don't know. I'm just
okay. Well, honest. I also found this movie to be a bit of a riddle. When I started watching it, I really disliked it, just to be honest. In fact, I hated it. And I was saying to myself, there's no way I would continue watching this if we weren't going to be talking about it. It was just pure discomfort. And it became clear to me very early that the point of the movie was to make me feel discomfort for 2.5 hours straight. And I given its grounding in an auteur director, given that it had all of the trappings of what I would consider an art film, I felt pretty well assured that I wasn't going to get any sort of satisfying, definitive moral statement at the end, or anything that would make me feel like what I would consider to be a true sense of resolution. So I pretty much, during the first third, I was really struggling. I was like, this is going to be painful and uncomfortable for more than 2 hours, and it's going to end on some really ambiguous art house note that's going to leave me even more satisfied. Now, I kind of still hate this movie, but after processing it more, I've grown to appreciate it quite a bit. I mean, I certainly appreciated it as I was watching for what I would consider its technical mastery. I thought that it was shot brilliantly. I thought that the imagery it was giving was incredible. Everything from the sound to the composition, the makings of a film all really impressed me. The subject matter, it'd be inaccurate to say it disturbed me. It's more that I just found it cringeworthy to watch in the most painful sense of that word. And I was sort of thinking, sorry that this is so rambly, but okay, movies are supposed to make you feel something. And there are some movies, like romance movies, that are intended to make you feel kind of mushy and maybe amorous or whatever. And action movies are supposed to make you feel exhilarated, excited, and triumphant. And And so there's a range of emotions that your average movie tends to want to make you feel. But there are all these other little emotions toward the margins that like most films never cover. And so I feel like there is a place in the ecosystem for a film that wants you to make you feel this emotion down here, which is like physical discomfort.
Yeah.
There aren't that many movies that do that to you. Let's
Yeah.
make one that's solely about that. And I felt like, okay, that's what this film is really doing.
Yeah. I like a movie that makes you think, and I like movies that push boundaries. And sometimes unfairly, I think I might give extra points to something if I feel like the filmmaker themselves is taking a really big swing and missing. First Reformed, the movie with Ethan Hawke playing the Reverend. If you haven't seen it, it's really a fantastic film. Like, is it perfect? No, it's very deeply flawed, but Paul Schrader took a massive swing with that movie, and I respect the hell out of him for doing that. And I think I'm on the same page with this movie, where I don't think it really works from A to Z. And I think it has a lot of flaws, but I think the director is taking like this really massive swing with it, not only to provoke and be artsy and to make you cringe and, show the prowess of body horror, and their technical abilities, but also like, if you want to look at it from a more intellectual point of view, you absolutely can. It's like, this movie is about identity. It's about gender fluidity. Like, that's what this movie is about, like acceptance amongst, sort of like societal norms, it's like.
Well, can I interject one thing? Because that touches on a really big problem, quibble, you might say, that I had with this. A lot of movies that are on the more artistic side of the railroad tracks tend to be about something, capital A, about, but they don't have the boldness to actually say what it is that they think about it. They present you with a lot of images, and they allow film critics to say, this is a important film that explores questions about, say, gender identity or gender fluidity or acceptance, but it never actually says anything about it, in my opinion. It's like it leaves the moral of the story conveniently out, leaving the viewer to ask more questions, really, than it is willing to give answers to. Now, that's seen as a virtue in many arts, that, yes, this movie makes you think, but it doesn't say anything. I would like to see a film like this that raises so many interesting questions actually make some attempt at trying to answer them.
Yeah, but I guess an interesting thing there is that, okay, so this movie is raising questions about the way we perceive gender fluidity and, your typical roles or homosexuality, all these different things that are or were considered severely taboo 40 years ago. And I guess, if you were to ask me, like, what do I think of gender fluidity in 2021, my answer is, I don't care. Like, do you, like, it's none of my business, you know what I mean? So if that's what I think is the correct stance for somebody to have about gender fluidity, then it's really hard to like make a statement that is, well, it doesn't matter. And maybe that's the problem here, is that like, to make a movie under the guise of a horror movie, a body horror movie that is discussing or presenting you with a problem of how do we perceive gender fluidity in a human being, is that it doesn't matter. So what does this movie matter? I don't know. I guess it doesn't really. It's like, it's not really, it's not challenging you, especially if you're the kind of person who would go see an art film. I think you've pretty much made up your mind that you're probably pretty progressive already if you're seeing an art film like this. So you probably already have feelings about gender fluidity, and this movie's not going to change your mind about that. In any case, I don't think. So
yeah, I don't think there are many swing voters, so to speak, that are coming into this movie and leaving with a different opinion, for that matter.
Exactly. And I guess maybe that's I think my problem with this movie, generally speaking, is that it just did not pick a lane. And I can't really decide if I like that or I don't like that, because on the one hand, it's like, well, why does she have to be a murderer? Like, what was the point of her murdering those people? Like, just to show that she's like defective in a way, or like, what are the reasons for why things were happening for the first half of this movie, just to get us to the point where she's being accepted by this man who's lost his son, like, what is the point of that entire first half of this movie?
Yeah.
And what is I don't know. It's weird how in this film, I don't accept, or I guess I'm constantly wavering in between it feeling like it's very realistic and it's just not realistic at all, because, you know, you can't get pregnant because of a car,
Right.
you know, like that's silly. But this movie does that. And I'm meant to accept that as what it is. But when I watch like Scanners, I can accept the idea that like people are able to like mind control you, and there's no, my suspension of disbelief is never broken. But with this movie, it's broken all the time, and I don't know why that is.
For me, I file that under dislike about this movie. I felt that. Okay, so this movie, one could say, is allegorical. What the allegory really is saying or is about is kind of an open question. I think that this is a downside to a movie that is allegorical, where sometimes attempting to have things represent other things in some sort of metaphorical way can lead there being these sort of like incongruities between events in the plot that happen at the level that we understand it at a non-metaphorical level, right? The movie was a mix of many things. Like it definitely didn't pick a lane. I think both on the genre question, like, is this an indie film? Is this an art film? Is this a sci-fi film? Is this a horror film? Is this whatever? I feel like it didn't exactly choose. Is it a political film? It didn't really choose one of those. It couldn't. Maybe one of the reasons that you found, for example, Scanners more credible to watch, something that you can really suspend your disbelief about, is that Scanners does world building. This is a world where there are people who can do this thing that is abnormal, that is almost magical. And they set that as the rules of the world. And then from that point on, the movie adheres to those same rules. In Titane,
normal world,
but crazy shit just happens, seemingly at the whim of the writer director wanting to escalate the discomfort that you're feeling from like an unexpected direction. I don't necessarily think it's bad. I just subjectively have a hard time with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why this is a struggle, is because you know, that's a pretty big gesture. Like that's a sweeping operatic sort of thing to decide to do, is that like, you know, yes, this movie's grounded, but we're going to do this ridiculous speculative thing, you know, in the middle of it. And it's like, I kind of respect somebody for just being like, no, we're just going for it. But at the same time, I don't know that in this case that it necessarily works in a way that I find totally satisfying or satisfying at all. You know, I think you end this movie, or at least I ended this movie feeling like, I don't know, you know, and it's a bad place to be for a movie. I'd almost rather hate something entirely or love something entirely rather than just be stuck in this, I don't know, this upside down, you know, like I just don't know what is going on right now. Maybe there's an element too of it where I wish I had more examples, because it's just coming to my brain right now. And maybe I'll think of some at some point, and maybe you'll have one too. But something I don't like is when I can feel behind the scene, like the writer or the director or the actor being like, this is badass. Like, this is going to be real cool when this happens. I don't like feeling like I don't know, like the people, and I'm just going to apologize to the filmmakers because you're better than this, but just that they like the smell of their own farts, maybe, you know, it's just a certain smugness that you can feel sometimes where it's like, and then she does this and it's going to blow your mind. I don't know. I felt that a lot during this movie, is I was made to feel like I should think this is cool or badass or whatever. And I just more felt, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it didn't gel. It felt very moment to moment for me. I mean, there's clearly a series of events happened and they were all interrelated in some way, but it didn't, again, it's all of this is connected. I feel like there was an attempt at allegory, but it's impossible to decode what it was a metaphor for. It was clearly about several subjects, like, you know, gender fluidity, but it didn't ever make any statement about that. It was clearly like cribbing, maybe that's too strong a word. It was using elements and tropes from various genres we're familiar with, but never committing to a single one of them. And yeah, it left me feeling a little hollow. It's a movie that I will continue to think about, I think, for a long time. It sticks in my mind. It's certainly unique.
Yeah.
And I love and really respect unique movies. So I have every respect for this being
Yeah.
made, right? Like, kind of like you were saying, but
yeah. How do you rate or recommend or any of that, you know, with a movie that you just, you know, man, I just don't know what to liken it to. I'm almost like apprehensive to liken it to this because it's the first thing that pops in my head. But immediately upon leaving Midsommar, I was also kind of like, huh, do I or don't I with this movie? And similarly, I thought about it for several days after, because it's the kind of movie that really has an aesthetic to it that you just cannot ignore. It burrows into you and you just can't not think about it after you've seen it. Differently, I think I came around to Midsommar in a way where I was like, no, that was pretty great. I liked that a lot. Whereas this one, I don't quite feel that way about it. And it's hard to say exactly. I don't know. Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm still right there. Like even 2 days later, I'm still like, no,
it's very confusing.
Am I a bad person if I don't like this movie? You know?
Yeah. Well, okay. Midsommar was my reference point initially. I mean, I indexed this movie on many things as I was watching. Like once I realized it was body horror, I was immediately thinking, okay, how does this stack against the Cronenberg stuff? I also indexed on like, you know, this is the third movie I've seen where a character has sex with a car. So there you go. That's a whole trope.
Sex with a car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess Crash, it's not really.
Yeah, they're having sex with the.
But there is another film, The Counselor, where there actually is a person having sex with a car.
Done to never seen The Counselor.
Comedic effect.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've not
so
seen
I guess it's only the second movie that with, but
yes.
What else did I index this against? Well, it reminded me of magical realism. I may have said that earlier.
Yeah,
where you're really attempting to create something that it feels grounded in reality, but then despite that, there are these absolutely just fabulous things.
Yeah, but I think we agree that it didn't achieve that.
Yeah,
like it achieved the concept of doing things that are magically real, but not in a way that I would say was well done or successful or consistent, which I think is the biggest problem, is that this movie just lacks any sense of consistency whatsoever, except for performance. Like I think obviously the performances were good in this movie. Like you can say a lot about the technicals of this film. That's kind of boring though, because it's like you're just going to say, yeah, good job pretending you're someone. Great, that's awesome. But doesn't really go beyond that for me. Stumped.
That's a good way to sum it up. I mean, I don't know if there's anything we're both so stumped that we're almost looking for additional things to talk about, but maybe there's a few quibbles we can talk about in specific just to round things out. But maybe this falls under the same category. I was confused by the behavior of the firemen on the team.
Yeah,
like on one hand, they behave as you would expect, but then they behave in ways that are almost caricatures, like the dance party that occurs in the
which one?
Yeah,
which one?
Yeah, this would not happen.
Well, but okay,
if it did, it wouldn't look like that.
Yeah, so that's part of the inconsistency in the magic realism, where I think that's the filmmaker trying to make a point, or not even make a point, just like a suggestion to a point of, what's toxic masculinity, what's repressed homosexuality, and like how do the two things come together in these strong, sexy firemen who can't help but dance with each other. And then when she gets up on the fire truck, before she has sex with the fire truck, with a sidebar, it's really not cool that when she's still holding the daddy's baby, she cheats on the car with the fire truck. Cold. but when she gets up there and she starts dancing provocatively, it's like, is that supposed to be like, it's making the water murkier, because you're at that point, it's like, well, wait a second, but they're homosexual and they think that's a man, and the man is dancing, but they're revolted by it and they don't know how to feel. And she's a he, but he's dancing like a she.
Yeah.
It's the whole, I think it's just meant to be confusing. Like ultimately,
I think it's meant to be confusing.
I think in a way, I mean, it's meant to be confusing because you're supposed to like not understand. Again, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, do you like men? Do you like women? Are you a man? Are you a woman? Are you a boy or a girl? They, them? It doesn't matter. Like, be who you are. Like it. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Well, yeah, there's feeling confused in a way that feels coherent to the film. And it's feeling confused on a meta level where you're just confused as to why something was presented a certain way.
Right.
And this was the second one, where just seeing the very unrealistic behavior of the firemen. Note, not fire people, because they're all expressly and explicitly
fire people.
It confused me on the meta level, because on literally 2 scenes ago they behaved like normal people, but then suddenly you put them in this unrealistic dance party and they're behaving like caricatures. They're behaving like the author had a grab bag of important present day current affairs subjects, and they reached in and they found one, and they threw that in and mixed it around.
And, you know what it almost feels like. It's another frustrating thing where, you know how people sometimes say like Christopher Nolan in his movies are real smart.
Yes.
And it's like, no, they aren't.
Not really.
They're just, sometimes they're complex. That doesn't mean that they're smart.
Yes.
And it's like a scene like this, throwing it together, in that way, it almost feels like the same thing, where it's like, no, but it's smart, right? Don't you see? And it's like, but is it
something?
Because there's no consistency, and because there's no clarity, the only thing that you can say that it is confusing. Mm-hmm. Really. It's not like going to Club Silencio and seeing the singer and then revealing that it's not actually her, and what that means to those characters. Like, that is being weird and obscure rather, to try to evoke a response, but it actually is central to the plot at the same time. It's not just an aesthetic sort of thing to be cute or smart or, artsy,
Well, the surrealism that you see in David Lynch, the confusing moments, the things that are obscure, weird, seem out of left field, ultimately resolve to at least a symbol that makes sense within the context of the movie as a whole.
Yeah.
Within this, I feel like it didn't. Again, I just feel like it didn't say something. It didn't say anything. It was about something without ever actually committing to what it was saying about that thing.
I've had arguments with people about this kind of thing that happens, and the best example I can think of is the Lighthouse. And this is a kind of akin to that, and maybe it goes back to what you were just saying earlier, is that, I liked the Lighthouse. I thought it was a fun movie to go see, but I didn't think it was as amazing as some of my colleagues thought it was. And my reasoning for that was because I just don't think it was about anything. And I think for me to think something is like truly an incredible film, it has to be about something. Like, I need you to go that extra mile above your aesthetics to tell me something or explore something interesting. And the argument I would get back is like, yeah, but I thought, isn't it like maybe about this? Or the director said that it's supposed to be like, this is what it's about. And I always hate that, because it's your job as a director to express that in a way that's clear enough for me to understand it. And if I went through your movie and I'm not able to pick up like the nuance of your metaphors or whatever, then you failed. You've just made a movie that isn't really about something. It's like writing fiction 101 almost, where it's like, if you have to explain anything as an author, instant fail. It has to be on the page. And if it's not, you don't get a chance to like call every person up who's reading your book and be like, did you see on page 120? Like that was the moment that, you know, would have tied it all together for you.
Yeah.
And this movie suffers in that way, I think.
I agree. I agree. I think that there's always a balance where you have to allow artists should be allowed to create work that requires work on the part of the audience.
Sure.
And some of us have more capacity, I think, for certain types of work than others. So, you know, I personally get really frustrated with overly symbolic or overly allegorical films, for example. You know, maybe I'm very lowbrow, but, you know, Jurassic Park really does it for me. It's a movie that's about something and it's entertaining and et cetera,
Sure.
et cetera, right?
Well, that's the biggest trick right there. And that's why it's frustrating being a filmmaker and knowing that there's people like Steven Spielberg out there or the Coen brothers or whomever who are able to entertain you like no other person, but also go the extra mile to make it about something and give you at least, no matter how cliche or easy or low-hanging fruit it is, it's like, yeah, what's Jurassic Park about? Okay, it's about like when man plays God and the consequences of that. It's like, it's not exactly highbrow.
Yeah.
Or I guess it was highbrow for long enough that now it is not highbrow anymore. You know, it's like enough people have thought about the concept that it's, you know, it's not exactly a challenge anymore. But that's what's really tough. And I prefer a movie that will go that way. But I don't know. It's like when you go see an opera, generally speaking, either in the, you know, the playbill or whatever, or online, it gives you the prerequisite reading that you need before you see it, so you understand what's going on. Because a lot of times it's not expository. It's, you know, 4 hours of singing, 7 narrative notes, you know, like that's it. It's like you're not getting a lot of story, so you need all that context to go with it. And that's fine. I guess that'd be kind of interesting. I've never seen a movie where I've had to, like, you know, do some reading before seeing it, you know.
Well, you know, David Lynch's Dune, notoriously, actually, when they released it, I don't know if they did this in all theaters, but they apparently did provide some printed material.
Oh, is that right? That's so funny.
Yeah,
I
that
guess
had like a glossary of some of the
yeah.
terms.
And I guess at some point, I mean, Star Wars has the scrolling text, so you kind of know what's going on.
But, you know, it's really not as much about, you know, there's two parts to this. There's the part where I need to factually understand literally just the events that are occurring. Like, oh, there's an imperial trade war occurring and that's why they're fighting. But then there's the conclusion of what the work is about.
Yes.
And that, I think, needs to just be squarely located inside the film or the book or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Even the latest Bond movie has an about at the very end, and it comes from a guy literally reading a quote from a book on the screen, but it ties it together in a way that's like very satisfying.
I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. Maybe that'll be something we can quibble about in a week or two. Yeah, I think the problem is that as difficult as it is to have your movie be entertaining and be about something, to have it be about something is very easy. It's just deciding what it's about and then presenting the information. And maybe the issue here is that the director just has a lot of energy. She's a little ball of energy and she want to do this, I want to do that. And there's going to be so many, it's going to be so good. And there's going to be so many things. And then she forgets to actually like make an actual cohesive, like, here, this is what it is. Which just kind of leaves you feeling like this.
Yeah. Feeling frustrated, confused. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I feel like we basically said our piece on this. So I'm gonna motion that we do our final review.
Sure.
Now. I'm just gonna say that I really respect this movie, and kind of like what you said, I feel like she really did take a big swing here. It's not a movie I'm ever going to forget. I'm going to continue to think about it. I'm going to continue to be frustrated by it. I wish that it had cohered into something that felt more whole. And you know, using our system, like, you know, I would say, you know, go and watch this, but, you know, make sure to invite the whole family, watch it together.
Yeah. I will say, you know, it won't be too different. I love an artist taking a big swing, and I also respect this movie for that. I think it's doing what she wanted it to do, and hell, she won the Palme d'Or, so it's like, well done, good for you. I don't think you should spend money to see this movie. necessarily. Spend the money you've already spent, maybe is the better way to put it. Like, wait for this to come out on Netflix or Hulu or HBO, whatever, wherever this lands and it becomes free to stream for a few months, wait for that moment and then watch it. And just be cautious. This movie, it's only a movie for a certain kind of person. Like, you can't really, you gotta have a certain stomach, I guess, for a movie like this. You know, it's not gonna be fun. This is not a fun movie.
It's not fun. It's not enjoyable in any way.